I have officially had the Bilt Mastercard for just over a year now, and with the popularity of this card in recent past, I wanted to put my 2 cents in about it after getting to experience it fully myself for a year. So no, this is not just going to be me reading off of Bilt's website. Instead, we're going to discuss whether or not this card makes sense for me personally. I really only have one main goal with this video, and that's to answer the question of, is the Bilt Mastercard actually worth it? And while this may seem like a simple yes at face value because this is a no annual fee card that offers something that nobody else in the entire credit card space does, trust me, it is more complicated than that, at least on an individual level. So today we're going to be covering the good, bad, and ugly of this card. As always, it's going to be a multi-part video broken down by chapters below, so feel free to skip around to the parts that interest you the most. But if you do, all that I would ask is that you give this video a like and check if you're subscribed to the channel or not when doing so to help make up for that lost retention. Now, before we dive into the number of points that I've earned from this card over the past year, as well as the monetary value I've gotten from those points and its benefits, let's first talk about the value of Bilt Rewards Points, so we have that to reference throughout. The points guide values Bilt Rewards Points at 2.05 cents per point, and this is really the highest that you're going to see with any transferable currency. But remember that this is an average value, and the value that you actually get for your Bilt points is heavily dependent on how you redeem those points. And unfortunately, that can be a pretty confusing topic with the Bilt card in particular, because there are just so many different types of redemptions you can make with this card, which of course can be a good thing too. But real quick, I want to just break down all the redemption methods, tell you what to avoid, which ones to consider, and which ones to definitely use. As for what I would never consider using, you can use your Bilt reward points to pay for your rent at a 0.55 cent per point rate. Definitely don't want to be doing that. The table minimum for any credit card point is at least 1 cent per point, but with this card, we'll see that that base is actually elevated from here. You can also use your points with Amazon at 0.7 cents per point. Again, don't use that. And you can shop the Bilt collection or do fitness classes or just a bunch of random stuff like that where you'll get up to 1 cent per point, but again, I would just not use them. Some mid-tier value redemptions that you could definitely consider would be using their travel portal at a 1.25 cent per point rate, and that's because the Bilt Mastercard gives you a 25% boost basically on your points to their portal. Or you can use your points towards a down payment on a home at a 1.5 cent per point rate, which is definitely an interesting value proposition that you don't see elsewhere really. But to get the best value, of course, like with any transferable currency, you're going to want to transfer your points out to Bilt's transfer partners. This is where that 2+ cent per point valuation comes from, and particular to Bilt, they have an excellent list of transfer partners for you to choose from, and their list is as competitive as it gets and rivals that of Chase and Amex and really anybody you're looking at. Speaking of Chase in particular, one of the big competitive advantages of Chase is that they offer you the ability to transfer out to Hyatt, and guess what? Bilt is the only other company that allows you to do exactly the same. On top of Bilt's great list of transfer partners, they also have really cool transfer bonus opportunities when it comes to like rent day and stuff like that, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Like for example, they've offered up to a 150% transfer bonus to Air France KLM and Virgin Atlantic, both really powerful transfer partners. So this is just more of a reason to save all of your Bilt points for, these types of transfer partner redemptions. Personally, as somebody on team travel, that's the only way I would ever choose to use these points. And that's obviously a pretty different approach than I take with my Chase Sapphire Reserve, where I do actually almost strictly use the Chase travel portal. But that's because that card gives me a 50% boost on my points compared to a 25% boost on the Bilt Mastercard. And that difference in boost actually makes a massive difference when it comes to domestic economy redemptions, considering a lot of hotel and airline partners have an average cent per point value between 1.25 and 1.5. At the same time though, I want to be clear that I don't think it's a bad idea to use the Bilt portal by any means, or you could also use that same 25% boost towards Bilt experiences. Like last year, they had the March Madness tickets that you could buy, and that was something I was considering using my Bilt points for. That's just more of a one-time opportunity though, compared to the majority of the time where you'll be most likely using transfer partners. Now that we have a baseline understanding of how valuable Bilt points can be, let's talk about how many of those I earned this year. The first thing we got to cover in this section, of course, is going to be the welcome offer I got on this card. Or should I say lack thereof. The Bilt Mastercard has no official welcome offer on it, but the vast majority, if not all applicants, get a special offer after they get approved for the card of getting 5x on every purchase on the card, except for rent, for the first 5 days of having it. While that sounds nice, it's actually not something that I personally chose to use at all, and here's why. When comparing the amount of points you'd earn by putting spend towards that offer compared to a different credit card's welcome offer, like one of the free Chase Ink cards, for example, you'll see that the opportunity cost just is not worth it. Let's say that you stockpiled $6,000 worth of spend to put on your Bilt card in that first 5 days of having it. You get 30,000 points for that. But if instead you use that spend towards a Chase Ink Unlimited or Chase Ink Cash card, you'd get 75,000 to 90,000 points for that offer alone, plus an additional 1 to 5x on all the spending that it took you to hit that $6,000 worth of spend. So you'd come out to a total of anywhere from 81,000 to 120,000 points. And this example is actually exactly what I went through whenever I applied for the Bilt card, because I applied for it on the same day that I applied for the Chase Ink Unlimited and directed all of that $6,000 worth of spend towards that card rather than the Bilt card. As you can tell already, my strategy and setup becomes really complicated really quick, thanks to having 16 active credit cards and the fact that I'm always spending towards new credit card welcome offers. And one of the best tools that I've found to help me manage all of that chaos is, of course, Max Rewards. Max Rewards is a one-stop shop for all of your credit cards, really, where you can track things like your total point balances, card balances, bill due dates, and so much more, all in one convenient interface. And while they have a ton of free features like the best card tool that allows you to know exactly what card to use no matter where you're shopping, or their super helpful welcome offer or retention offer trackers, they also have a paid tier called Max Rewards Gold that'll not only automatically activate your quarterly rotating categories for you on your cards like your Chase, Freedom, Flex, but will also automatically activate all of your credit card offers for you, which I want to talk about more. I don't know about you, but in starting a new year, I do my best to make sure my spending habits are in order and I'm saving money where I can. So Max Rewards offer activation feature fits perfectly into this. Last year alone, it saved me over $100 on my natural spending. Like I didn't go out of my way at all to use the offers. And that's just a massive plus without having to do any work on my end aside from link my cards to the app. If you want to try out even just the free features of Max Rewards that I mentioned, please be sure to download it through the link in my description. And during the sign up process, if you enter the promo code Spencer, you'll get a 1-month discount off of your annual Max Rewards Gold subscription if you ever do decide to upgrade for those features like the auto offer activation and so much more. As always, thank you to Max Rewards for sponsoring this video, but let's get back into the content. So aside from welcome offers, which obviously I didn't have on this card, the other way you can earn points on it is from general spending. Just for reference, so you don't have to look it up, this card gives you 3x back on dining and 2x back on travel. And those two categories are basically a direct shot at the $95 Chase Sapphire Preferred that covers those two categories as well. So we can see what kind of banks they're targeting here. Outside of those two categories though, you also earn 1x back on all of your rent purchases without paying any transaction fees. And that's the main competitive advantage of this card, of course. Plus you get 1x back on everything else. And you have the extra earning potential of earning more through the Bilt Neighborhood program, where you can get up to 10x back on Bilt Dining, 10x back on Bilt Fitness classes, 2x bonus points with Lyft whenever you link your Bilt and Lyft accounts, 2x back at Walgreens, and honestly probably more than that I missed. And finally, let's note too that they also say that they're going to be adding the ability to earn rewards on mortgages soon. That's not 100% clear if it's coming to the Bilt Mastercard or how high that earning rate will be. Unfortunately, I'm not super bullish on that earning category right now, as I explained in my video about my biggest credit card mistakes, but I do hope that I'm wrong about it. So that's obviously a ton of earning categories that this card covers, but the icing on the cake is that on rent day, you get double your rewards on every purchase except for rent. So as long as I remember it, obviously the Bilt card is the only card that I use on the first of every month. And that's normally for some dining purchases or something like that. So I'm effectively earning 6x Bilt Rewards points on all of those purchases, which at a 2+ cent per point rate is worth about 12% back. And that's great. The one big catch with this card that I haven't mentioned yet is the fact that you do have to use it 5 times every month in order to actually earn your points. While this is something that's just like pretty annoying to have to deal with, I wouldn't say it's not a reason to get the card. Personally, I just keep the card in my wallet and basically use it for anything under $10 or so, which usually ends up being coffee purchases, and I'm able to hit that requirement no problem. Still though, I do consider this a negative in my overall review of the card, and why they put this on it, I really just don't understand. Well, I guess that's not true, because we know that they do it in order to avoid having people only using this card for rent, which is what most of us want to do with it. So it makes sense from a business perspective, but I'd say it's a negative for the consumer. Let's hone back in on the true bread and butter of this card though, that being the ability to earn 1x back on rent without any transaction fees. This earning category puts this card in a market of its own, and it's a big reason why a lot of us feel like we absolutely need this card. However, surprisingly, it's a lot less powerful than I initially thought it would be for me. And that's mainly due to, once again, like with the welcome offer, the opportunity cost of putting that large amount of spend on the Bilt card compared to a different one. In my opinion, this is actually one of the biggest intangible cons of the Bilt Mastercard that we don't talk about that much. So let me try to explain this entire concept to you briefly. Y'all know I'm not great at that, but I'm gonna go ahead and try. The fact of the matter is that housing is most of our highest expense every single month. So the fact that Bilt came in and gave you the ability to earn some rewards on that purchase when nobody else gave you that before is a massive plus, and I love Bilt for doing that. But that's not to say that we couldn't actually put those charges on a credit card before. Yes, you would have to pay a 3% transaction fee to do that though. So how does that make sense if you could never earn more than 3% back on rent purchases with a credit card? Well, this is where things get interesting. I would agree that it's a bad idea to put rent purchases on any other credit card besides the Bilt credit card, except for one situation. You're spending towards a welcome offer or retention offer that has a minimum spending requirement that your natural spend would not allow you to hit. I say this because if you get a good welcome offer, you should expect to earn anywhere from 10 to 30% or more return on spend for that welcome offer. So even if you take away that 3% that you'll pay for the transaction fee, you're still doing much, much better than just 1% back on the Bilt Mastercard. This is actually something that I've done with a lot of my recent card applications because I'm somebody with low spend every month. And with that being the case, the Bilt Mastercard really has no use case for me right now. For my math nerds out there, which I am one of, let's take a quick example to the extreme and say that you use a full $8,000 worth of rent prepayments towards the Amex Platinum Card welcome offer, which obviously you probably wouldn't do, but again, taking it to the extreme. If you were able to lock in the previously elevated welcome offer of 175,000 points for that amount of spend on the Amex Platinum, plus 1% back for all of that $8,000 worth of spend towards the requirement, that means you earned a total of 183,000 points for that $8,000 worth of spend. Calculating the 3% transaction fee you would pay on all of that, that would be $240 worth of fees. Now that we have both those numbers, we can assign a 2 cent per point valuation to all of those Amex points we earned, which comes out to a $3,660 value from that welcome offer. Subtract out the $240 worth of fees paid, and you're still in the positive $3,420. You could even take out the $695 annual fee if you wanted to, but of course, hopefully if you're applying for that platinum card, you actually use it. So I'm not going to do that here. Let's compare that value to what you would have gotten on the Bilt card. Well, at 1% back for that $8,000 worth of spend, you would have earned 8,000 points. And taking that same 2 cent per point valuation for those points, that means you earned $160 for that $8,000 worth of spend. Let's go even further and say that you got a 75% transfer bonus for those Bilt points. That would net you 14,000 points effectively. At a 2 cent per point rate, that's $280 worth of value. So we're talking a difference of $3,140 worth of value by putting that spend towards the platinum card versus the Bilt card instead. Yes, I understand that this example is a bit flawed because you might not be able to prepay that much worth of rent because your rent portal doesn't allow you to, or you don't have that amount of cash on hand, and you couldn't necessarily do this in perpetuity. But as you can see, there is a lot of value to be had by putting your rent purchases, which you would have had to make anyway, on a different card other than the Bilt card. Again, is this a reason to not apply for the Bilt Mastercard? No, I wouldn't say so. But it's really important to always analyze all of your options out there and see what the opportunity cost really is. That same argument is why I ended up canceling my Amex Gold card, and it applies to really any credit card you go for. So, as always, that was not a brief explanation as much as I wanted it to be, but I wanted to paint the full picture for you before I revealed how many points, or maybe how little points I earned on this card over the past 12 months. As someone who is almost constantly spending towards new welcome offers all year round, all I ended up really using the Bilt card for was for my coffee purchases, with the occasional like few $100s worth of rent that might have gotten put on it because my prepayment wasn't the full amount needed. But this is a temporary strategy, and I do assume that eventually I will be putting my rent purchases back on this card. It's just not what makes the most sense for me right now. I do want to mention too, for full transparency, that I earned over 100,000 points in referrals on this card this year, which I talked about in my video about how much money I made from credit cards in 2024. But be assured that this is not factoring into my review of this card for the purposes of this video. So from all of the spend that I put on this card in the past year, I earned a grand total of 13,081 points, the monetary value of which we'll get into here in a few minutes. Now, with most cards that I give a year X review on for the channel, I have the ability to earn a lot of value back from the credits and benefits that that card has on it. But being that the Bilt Mastercard is a no annual fee card, we're going to be a little bit strapped to find extra value here. Regardless, I'll cover some of the biggest benefits you can expect to get from the card outside of the earning categories, even if it doesn't contribute to anything on my bottom line. One of those benefits is going to be Bilt Elite status, where they have 4 membership tiers: blue, silver, gold, and platinum. And with that status, you're going to have things like access to better rent day promotions, like those transfer bonuses I mentioned earlier, Air France KLM Flying Blue status, benefits with Blade, which is an urban air mobility platform, Bilt milestone reward perks as you climb up the tiers, the ability to earn interest on your points balance, a complimentary Bilt collection gift when you reach platinum status, bonus points on new lease or lease renewals of Bilt Alliance properties, and Bilt home ownership concierge. But further than that, this card also gives you access to Bilt's amazing transfer partners we talked about, and their super robust travel portal that I really love the functionality of, even though I don't use it. $5 worth of Lyft credits if you take 3 rides in a calendar month, cell phone protection, purchase security through theft and damage protection, an auto rental collision damage waiver, trip cancellation and interruption protection, trip delay reimbursement, and no foreign conversion fees. As always, there are probably even more benefits to this card that I missed, so be sure to do your research on it before applying for it. But for a no annual fee card, this exhaustive list is really powerful. For the sake of my review, I mean, I really didn't utilize anything that I just mentioned. So again, the perks and benefits of this card are going to give me $0 worth of value. So overall, the total monetary value I can say I got from this card all came from that spend that I put on it, which was only 13,081 points. At a cashback rate with Bilt at least of 0.55 cents per point, that's $71.95 worth of value. Let me repeat, I would never use that option. I just put it here because it's one of the popular redemption methods for all cards. Through their travel portal at a 1.25 cent per point rate, that would be worth $163.51. And at 2.05 cents per point with transfer partners, you're talking about a valuation of $268.16. To reiterate from earlier, I do expect to get around 2 cents per point on average for my Bilt points, and that's mainly due to the fact that I want to use my Bilt points for all of my Hyatt bookings this year, as well as maybe sprinkle in some business or first class redemptions, depending on if I need points that I don't have in other currencies. But being that I got a little over $250 worth of value, that's obviously not going to get me very far. So this prompts me to have to think about what I want to actually do with this card. Is it one I should cancel, keep active, push more spend to, or what's next for it? Well, let's talk about that. At this point, I feel like you'll have a really good understanding of how I feel about the Bilt Mastercard. But let me say, regardless of how I personally choose to use it, this card is in a category of its own. And if you are a renter, I think it's still very well worth adding to your setup, or maybe even adding to your roadmap if you're a homeowner, considering those mortgage rewards are hopefully coming pretty soon. I would not apply for the card under the expectation that that will get added, because that's just kind of wishful thinking. But yeah, for renters right now, still amazing. Not only is the Bilt Mastercard offering you points on rent purchases without the fees, but their team is changing the game every single month by introducing new features we haven't seen from any other lenders, and I love that. I will say they seemingly have taken a step back over the past few months when it comes to the amount of value they provide for their customers, but I would still say that they're pushing the envelope more than the rest, and that's a positive for all consumers. Then again though, this is a review based on my experience, and as you can tell, my experience with this card has been a bit disappointing so far. Initially, I thought I'd get an easy 19,000 or more points from just putting my rent purchases on this card alone, plus with the sprinkling in of, dining purchases on rent day and stuff like that. I'd figure it'd be a staple in my wallet, but I was wrong. I just didn't have the foresight to see how little I would use this card with my current strategy of using rent purchases to help me hit those large minimum spend requirements, alongside using my Chase Sapphire Reserve for all of my dining and travel purchases, which, it does at least as good or better than the Bilt Card app. Also, like I mentioned, I really haven't taken advantage of any of its perks and benefits over the last year. So all this card is to me is one that gives me 3x back on, my coffee purchases, 6x back on my rent day dining, and 1x back on maybe $1,000 or so worth of purchases in the past year on rent, but it requires me to use it 5 times a month to get any rewards at all. And when I lay it out like that, it kind of makes me wonder why I even keep this card in my wallet at all. But when it comes to whether or not I actually regret opening this card, it's kind of hard to say that I do, because it is a no annual fee card that can only give me positive value. And that's why I don't plan to cancel it or anything like that, even though it is just dead weight in my wallet right now. Is it worth a Chase 524 slot for you? Well, that's extremely situational, but it very well could be for a lot of people, especially if you'll be using it for your rent purchases every month and don't have the opportunity to earn points on those purchases in any other way. And it's obviously a pretty beautifully designed credit card, but don't just get it for that reason. In the end, my final verdict on this card is that if you're a renter, you can't do any better than the Bilt Mastercard right now, unless you implement a similar strategy to me. And hopefully even homeowners will be able to say the same over the course of the next year or so. And if you do end up wanting to apply for it, feel free to check out this video here where you can watch me apply for the card live and give you tips and tricks on how you can get approved for it. Or if you just want that quick dopamine hit of seeing me unbox this card live, check out the video underneath it. As always, Odin and I both really appreciate y'all watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.